Bitcoin is a conservative monetary system. It's the first system that respects the laws of thermodynamics and the laws of physics and the laws of math, which means it is true and pure, right? It has integrity. If you have integrity, if you have something which is true and pure and you have durability, then you can build a family around it, a life around it, a company around it, or civilization around it. Steel is concentrated energy in metallic form. You ever walk in a steel plant and you look at the energy going into steel refining? Yeah. It's concentrated energy. The history of the human race is the civilization that channels energy most effectively always wins. Steel trumps iron. Iron trumps bronze. Bronze trumps rocks. Bows and arrows trump the guy with the spear. The guy with the spear beats the guy with the knife. It's always a matter. If you have air power, you beat land power. Sea power beats the army, and nuclear power trumps everybody. And so, if I have steel, I have concentrated metallic energy. I can create a skyscraper punched up 100 stories in New York. How long will it last? 100 years. How long will a steel ship last? Longer than you will last, as long as it doesn't corrode. Wooden ships? Not so much. Wooden ships rot, right? You want to build a building and punch it up against gravity and hold it 100 years. You need concentrated energy. If you want to build a trust fund that'll last 100 years, how do you save $100,000 for 100 years and give it to your great-grandkids? You put it in the US dollar, you use 99% of your economic energy. If you're maybe 99.5%. You put it in gold, gold supply doubles every 30 years. The gold bankers keep inflating the gold. Maybe you lose 90% of your economic energy. But that would be a lucky happenstance because just about every country on earth seized the gold from their citizens in the last 100 years. Everybody, even the US, they take your gold.
Yeah.
So you want to save money for 100 years. You can't do it with the currency. You can't do it with gold. Which company is going to be around in 100 years? You want to put $100,000 into real estate in Florida? Can you buy $100,000? Let's say you could. 2% tax, 2% maintenance, 4% maintenance fee, 4% of $100,000, $4,000 a year. Half-life, like your money's not going to last 100 years. How do I preserve my property, which is economic energy, which is capital, which is money? How do I preserve that? I need something harder, right? More durable. I need a steel. I need an economic steel. Steel is concentrated metallic energy. Bitcoin is concentrated digital energy. It's energy in digital form. It's vacuum-packed food. It's something sitting in orbit, right? Right? I eliminated the friction on energy. What's the half-life of energy? If I take a megawatt of power and I sell it at 12 cents a kilowatt hour, I have about $1 million. Okay, I'll give you $1 million of electricity. How long can you hold it in a battery? You lose 2% a month. You can't hold it very long. You're going to lose 24% depletion rate in a battery of electricity. How do you send $1 million of electricity from New York to Tokyo? You can't. You can send electricity 500 miles over a power line, you'll lose 6%. Send it 10 times, you'll lose 60%. It doesn't move. Convert that energy, that electricity, into digital energy, a la Bitcoin. You upgrade it. If you were to convert a megawatt of power via Bitcoin miner into Bitcoin, you'd have about $5 million worth of Bitcoin. You can hold it forever. You can send it to Tokyo for a nickel. Okay? You can put it in a trust fund, right? Bitcoin's going up 170% a year for a decade. The S&P 500 index is going up 14% a year on average for a decade. Gold is flat. It's not going anywhere. It's getting demonetized. It's a dead rock in a basement. It's not fast enough. You can't put gold on an iPhone. Gold's getting depleted, inflated, and manipulated away by the bankers and the miners. So Bitcoin is simply pure economic energy. These engineers, Satoshi and all of Satoshi's compatriots, What they did is created an engineered monetary asset on an open, permissionless network that anybody could participate in. Any country, any company, any individual. You don't need a bank. You don't need to ask permission, right? It is the ultimate egalitarian system. If you want to give property rights to everybody in Africa and South America, even in the face of a hostile regime, you can do it with a $50 Android phone and a simple download. What's your next best idea? Go to Zimbabwe, okay? You have $100. How are you going to store the $100? One more metaphor. If you can't store property, if you have no property rights, that means you can't store economic energy. If I took away every dime from your family and you got up tomorrow, you'd be worried. You lose your job, you're going to go hungry, right? You need money. You've got a bank, you're in the Western world, you have Western privilege, lucky you. You have stocks. If you have stocks, they go up 34% a year. Maybe you're keeping ahead of the inflation rate. If I take away your stocks, and you have to store in currency, well, now you can't stay ahead. If I take away your bank, you can't even have the currency. What if the dollar is not the worst currency? The dollar is the best currency. If I put you in Zimbabwe, it's much worse. If you're in Argentina, you lost 40 to 60% of your purchasing power this year. If you're in Venezuela, much worse. So what does it mean to not have property rights and to not have a strong currency? It's like being a type 1 diabetic. If you're type 1 diabetic, you can't form insulin. Insulin converts excess nutritional energy into fat. Fat is an organic battery. Fat will keep you alive 90 days without food. If you can't form fat, you can eat continuously nonstop and you will starve to death. So diabetes, before insulin was invented, was a death sentence. If you live in a country with a collapsed currency, you're an economic diabetic. In the 2 weeks after you lose your job, you can't feed your family, you can't feed yourself, you can't plan for the future. So now we're back to what's the basis of civilization and what's the basis of virtue in a society? So you got to be able to plan for the future. You got to look out 10 years and believe that you can provide for your family. What's the point of investing in something if you think that everything's going to hell in 5 years or 10 years? How did I get into Bitcoin? I had a company with $500 million in cash, earning 0% interest, and I heard the bankers say, we're not even thinking about raising interest rates. I saw a K-shaped recovery where everybody on Wall Street got 30% richer doing nothing in a year, where everybody on Main Street had to work 30% harder to stay still. That's what I saw last year. If you're on Wall Street with $1 billion, you went into the year with $1.3 billion. If you're on Main Street working for a living, selling something by the sweat of your brow, you had to raise your prices 30%, working harder in order to generate 30% more money to buy the same thing you could have bought before the crisis. What I saw was 2,000 people in my company working hard, doing 100,000 things right every year could make $50 million. And the money in the bank was going to lose $100 million a year in value doing nothing. And we were running as hard as we could and going backwards, right? That's the problem. It's like you're in a boat, you're rowing across, you're in a rowboat, you're going across the water, and the wind starts blowing in your face, and now you're getting blown backwards. You're going to row harder? The wind is the monetary inflation rate. Right? When at 10% wind, it's hard. When it got to 20% wind, who can grow their cash flows 25% a year? Who can do it? A monopoly, a digital tech monopoly might, but I mean, nobody else can. Dentist can't, doctor can't, normal people can't, normal company can't. So the wind starts blowing double and triple in your face. You're rowing, you're not going to get across the Atlantic, you're going to die on that rowboat. So what do? Turn the boat around, put up a sail with the wind.
Yeah.
That's what I did.